Ever think about how something as basic as what you eat can actually change how your genes work?
Yeah, it's pretty wild, right?
Today, we're going to take a deep dive into this whole world of epigenetics
Okay, love it.
and see how vitamin A, of all things, is right in the thick of it.
Very cool.
We've got a 2017 review article here called Vitamin A in the Epigenome.
Okay.
It's from the journal Critical Reviews in Food Science and Nutrition.
Sounds like a good one.
So get ready to have your mind blown a little bit.
Yeah, this area of research is really exciting because it really gets at that kind of intricate dance between our genes and the environment.
Yeah, and it goes way beyond that, basic idea that our DNA is just this fixed blueprint.
Right. It's not just like a set thing. It's like
exactly.
It can change.
So like for anyone who needs a little refresher, epigenetics is about how genes can get switched on or off.
Yeah.
But without actually changing that underlying DNA sequence itself.
Exactly.
Imagine kind of like you've got the same computer hardware, but you can run different software on it, right?
Right, exactly.
And you get totally different outcomes.
Yeah, and these kind of software changes, they're actually happening because of these modifications to our DNA,
right,
or even to the proteins that the DNA is wrapped around, which are called histones.
Okay.
So, for example, one of these modifications is called DNA methylation, and that's where you basically get this methyl group that attaches to a DNA strand.
Okay.
And that can actually silence a gene.
Wow.
Or you can have something like histone acetylation, which actually tends to loosen up how the DNA is packaged.
Okay.
And then that makes genes more accessible so they can be transcribed.
So it's like opening up the book so that the information can be read.
Exactly. And it's not just about like the genes we're born with.
Right.
It's about how the environment and even our diet can actually change how those genes are expressed.
Yeah, that's where vitamin A comes in, right?
Exactly.
Most of us, we think of vitamin A, we think good eyesight. Right.
But this article is showing just how much more there is to it.
It's way more than that.
I mean, we're talking cell growth, differentiation, immune function, the whole works.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so fascinating is that vitamin A isn't just passively involved in these processes.
Right.
It actually actively modulates how genes are expressed.
Okay, how does it do that?
So basically, it does this by interacting with what's called its nuclear receptor.
Okay.
And this receptor basically acts like a molecular switch. It can turn genes on or off depending on the specific situation.
Okay, hold on. I think for some of us, when we hear nuclear receptor, our brains might kind of like zone out a little.
Yeah, it sounds pretty complicated, right?
Break that down a little bit?
Sure, yeah. So think of it like a lock and key.
Okay.
So vitamin A, or actually the metabolites that come from vitamin A, they act as the key.
Okay.
And they fit perfectly into this specific receptor, which is the lock.
Okay, got it. And then when they bind together, that actually triggers a whole cascade of events.
Okay.
That ultimately affects which genes are going to be transcribed into RNA and then translated into proteins.
Ah, that takes me back to biology class.
Yeah.
The central dogma.
Exactly.
DNA to RNA to protein.
That's it.
Remember that.
Yeah.
So what are some really concrete examples of how vitamin A is actually influencing epigenetics?
Yeah, so the research actually mentioned some really interesting examples.
Okay.
So for instance, vitamin A can actually affect the expression of this gene called P21.
P21.
Yeah, P21.
Okay.
And this gene is really important because it's a key regulator of the cell cycle.
Okay.
So how often cells are dividing.
Right.
And this has huge implications for whether cancer develops or not.
Right.
So in some cases, vitamin A can actually promote the expression of these genes that suppress tumors, which essentially puts the brakes on cell growth when it's happening too quickly.
So that's why we always hear about vitamin A being like this potential protector against certain cancers. Okay?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing. What about its role in how stem cells behave?
Right. So vitamin A is absolutely crucial for stem cell differentiation, which is a process where these, you can think of them as blank slate cells.
Yeah, like the blank slate cells.
Yeah, exactly. They specialize into different specific cell types.
Right.
So the article actually highlights how retinoic acid, which is a derivative of vitamin A, plays a really critical role in guiding these stem cells on what they're going to become. So whether they're going to turn into, say, skin cells or nerve cells, that's all guided by retinoic acid.
So it's not just like preventing bad stuff from happening, it's like actively shaping our tissues and our organs.
Exactly. It's essential for development and tissue regeneration.
Wow. It's making me rethink my multivitamin, I gotta say. So what about the immune system? How does vitamin A tie into that?
So vitamin A is like a VIP for a healthy immune system, basically.
Right.
It affects how all sorts of immune cells act, including these things called T cells, which are like the frontline soldiers, fighting off infections.
Right.
And the article points to a lot of evidence that if you're deficient in vitamin A, your immune function can really take a hit.
Okay.
You're way more susceptible to getting infections.
So this is all like super fascinating.
Right.
But it also makes me think, if vitamin A has this much power over our epigenome, shouldn't we be a little cautious about like taking too much?
Oh, absolutely.
Like with supplements and stuff.
That's a really, really valid point and a really important thing to consider.
Yeah.
So yeah, vitamin A is definitely essential.
Right.
But if you start taking too much, especially through supplements over a long period of time, it could really throw off that delicate balance of gene expression that we were talking about.
And we're still learning about what the long-term consequences of that might be.
Right.
But it definitely highlights that even with nutrients that are good for you, you still got to be careful about how much you're taking in.
So what's the big takeaway here for our listeners today?
I think the biggest thing is that the choices we make every day, things like what we eat, they have a really profound impact on our health.
Yeah.
And that impact goes all the way down to the level of our genes.
Wow.
So this whole deep dive into vitamin A and epigenetics, it shows just how complex and how interconnected everything is in our bodies.
Yeah, it really does. It kind of makes you think about like all these other everyday choices, right?
Absolutely.
Like how much we sleep, how stressed we are, what kind of toxins we're exposed to. Are all of those leaving their own marks on our epigenome?
I think they probably are.
It's pretty mind-blowing, and it's totally changing the way we think about our health, right?
And our potential.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. This stuff is really fascinating.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a really cool topic.
Absolutely.
Really enjoyed it.
Until next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.